band is this? band is this?
Everybody poops sometimes.
Give us the smother.
Wake up, sweetness.
Your first time should be more than special.
I'm in, Savannah said. Good Lord, Gemma.
When a man and a woman, in this case, really, really love each other, what happens is they fuck.
Ooh, hello?
Oh, dang it, I lost my fish. This next word almost sounds like Quidditch. Quidditch milade Diana Agosiagath an Fiedian. As much as I love fucking you, sweetness, we stared into each other's eyes whilst I moaned in ecstasy. Having consumed half of the bourbon, I keep saying bourbon. You know, every time I mess up on a word, Stunt Mama just shows up.
She had her seductive smile on her lips.
I said we couldn't have sex. I didn't say anything about everything else. Ew. Happy to help. Biatch. You are the spark of light and the vastness of my night. His note, like a finality to a beautiful, breathtaking song. I messed up the timing. Hi. There is definitely, supposedly, still an ad going right now. But anyway, 2, 1. Okay, now we're done with the ads, supposedly. So good evening. Hello. Nice to see you. Was there an ad? I mean, did an ad even play? Did it even happen? I don't know. Not a clue. You know, Twitch should integrate showing me the ads so I can see when it officially is playing. Hey, I'm at Grand Number 2's baseball game, forgot my earbuds, so I'm waving at you. I'm waving at you. America's favorite pastime. Baseball. That's a lie. Okay, so you got one when you first joined. Okay. Whatever. This is... Every time I stream, we talk about this because I have no idea what Twitch is doing. Literally not a clue. It drives me up the wall. But anyway. Let me back it up. Just back it up. Jen, hello. It's good to see you. Amlas, my dutiful mod. Lovely to see you as well. And the Savage Zebra. Zeebs, I have a question. And Stump Mama's mama, of course, even though she can't hear me. But hello. Zeebs, I have a question for you. If you could indulge me. Good to see you too. I made it. You did. I mean, you usually pop in at some point, so it's nice to see you right now instead of at some point. Is Zeeb still there? Zeebs. 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 While we're waiting for Zeebs, I'm gonna push a button. I don't think you're gonna hear any extra audio, but I want you to let me know if you do, because if you don't, then I know I need to do some more wiring and whatnot. So I'm gonna push a random button here. Let me know if you hear any noise. Killa. You did hear that. Okay. You heard a crow. Perfect. Was it... How loud was it? Like, was it too loud? It wasn't too loud. Awesome. Okay. I was worried that these extra sound things that I have on my mixer weren't going to come through because of how it's set up. But it seems that everything is working perfectly. The problem is, settle down, microphone. The problem is I can't see what they are because they're too far away. Yeah, I don't know.
Congratulations, well done.
So there you go. Stump Papa says hi. Hello, Stump Papa. And Mitchell's here. Mitchell redeemed almost first. Well done. I chose this puzzle. It's got a Viking ship in there. I chose it because of the book we're reading tonight. I'm going to reread the back cover because we are officially starting a new book tonight, which is very exciting. New microphone as well. I have everything set up with the mixer. Very excited about all of this. I even thought about like setting up a second camera just to look at the mixer because it's so lit up and it has a screen and it's exciting. But well, I haven't done that yet, obviously. But yeah, so lots of new stuff. Lots of new stuff. It's very cool. I'm very excited. My mouth is also very odd. Oh, that's hot tea. Okay. Sheesh, that is warm. Holy buckets. Let's take the lid off. Wow. Let that get that relaxed a bit. Rafiki, well, what's up, man? Mic sounds great. Thank you. Yep, we upgraded from a USB to XLR. Before we were using the Yeti X Professional from Logitech, which is a good mic. I was starting to have some issues with it though, as some of you know, with the popping and whatnot. So I decided, you know what, with the voice work I'm trying to get into more and more and more, and to keep stream as quality as I can, I upgraded to Logitech's Blue Sona XLR mic, got myself the mixer, and now this is the first official stream with it. I've been in a couple of other people's streams using the microphone, but this is my first one for myself going live. So you are all, you know, hearing it for the first time. So I'm very, very excited. Didn't know Logitech put out the Yeti. Yeah, it's a decent mic, and it's reasonably priced for what it is. When I purchased the Yeti Professional, it was $130, I think, give or take, somewhere in that ballpark. 120, 130. So I definitely recommend it. I also like it because the USB mics from Logitech also give you access to the G Hub, and the G Hub allows you to make adjustments to your sound, to your mix, so that it's live mixing. Because this is an XLR and it's not directly connecting to the computer, I'm using a mixer on the side, essentially. That's why I have the mixer. And there's a stunt mama. Hi, stunt mama.
Somebody come get her. She's dancing like a stripper.
Yeah, why aren't you at a baseball game? That tea is delicious. Adamantine, hello, hello. How are you? And how are you tonight? I'm doing pretty well. I'm a little tired. I drove 3 hours for a 1-hour meeting and then 3 hours back, caught up with the family, and then sat in here. Sat down. So, Stump Papa's turn tonight. I went Tuesday and I had a rough day. Okay, well, that makes sense. My wife also had a rough day for different reasons, I imagine. So she's trying to relax right now as well. So, you're in the right place. We're starting the new book tonight. How's she doing? She had more tests today, so it was rough. I'm not gonna get into the specifics right now, but it was tough for her. But she's a lot stronger than I am. Let's just say that much. Completely get it. Send her my love. I will. And I can always hit you up on the side too, because it is what it is. But for here and now, let me read to you the back of this book, which we are now going to get into. Exclamation point Orthea. If you want to see more about this book and other works, this is written by a fellow streamer, That Violin Chick. She is actually live right now and playing the violin, would you believe? Let me just make sure I spell this right, because... Yep, see, I keep thinking she changed the spelling, but she didn't. Okay. There you go. She's playing the violin right now. I can see her on my screen. And she's pretty amazing at it, not gonna lie. And she's a writer, so she's authored some books. All right. So here's the back of the book. Oh, hold on. I'm great. Had a decent day at school. I'm just too hot here. Oh, yeah? I found out the other day that I did not get the choir award that I applied for. I'm so sorry. But it's fine. But graduation is in 2 weeks and 1 day, so I'm super excited for that. Graduation is definitely something to look forward to. I'm excited for your graduation. I'm sorry you didn't get the choir award that you applied for. I have no doubt that you deserved it regardless. I am sure that there were so many people that applied for it, and it was probably really tough to choose. I have no doubt that you are a worthy candidate. Absolutely. So congrats on that, if nothing else. Okay? All right. Reading the back cover. What if everything you loved was destroyed? Fiona had all she desired. A loving family, a handsome fiancé, and a peaceful village. Then, the Vikings came. Her family dead and her home burned, she finds herself whisked away by unseen forces to another world where everything looks the same but is so very different. She is taken in by a group of travelers who aren't what they seem, and discovers she's more like them than she expected. Tacky Corgi! Hi, how are ya? You made it in time. You did. We're just reading the back cover. The Mordor General Ivar is pursuing the power of Old Grange with his disembodied companion, the sorceress Alina. Fiona and her new friends must rally together to stop this formidable force. Okay. Thank Atkinson, 15 seniors to choose from. Wow. And he always chooses the same people every time. Interesting. Teacher's favorite, perhaps? Interesting. Amlas, if you could be so kind, would you mind, please, shouting out some of our friends here in chat as I crack open this book? Stunt Mama for sure. Let me just make sure I'm not missing anybody. Rafiki, Tacky Corgi. I think those... Those are the ones I'm seeing in chat. Yep. She is playing music right now. I shouted her out before. I listened to some of her tunes while I was getting set up. She's such a good player, violinist. All right, we are cracking open the pages for the first time. I thought you streamed, Tacky. Really? All right. Well, now's your chance to stream. Now's your chance to get in it. All right, so I've opened up the first few pages. Oh my gosh, and Mama House Gaming's here. Can we also get a shout out for Mama House Gaming? Hi, Mama House Gaming, how are you? We don't have a table of contents, which, nope, lol, I have before, but like 2 times. Okay. Some books do have a table of contents, some don't. It's always a hit and miss if we see one. And it's fine either way. And it looks like... Oh. We also don't have any page numbers. This is really throwing me off. I was just about to say the book goes to X page, but there are no page numbers. So I don't know what to tell you. So there you go. So we're just going to start at chapter 1 on page whatever. Yeah. So there you go. Is everybody ready? New mic, new book, new mixer. It's time to go. Is this part of a series? Not that I'm aware of, but exclamation Orthea will show you more. More. All right. Chapter 1. Oh, also, it may just be me, but is Atkinson buffering for anyone else? If it is me, I may need to restart my laptop. I'm not buffering. That I'm aware of. Just you. Okay. I mean, you could just try refreshing the stream too. That might do it. Why does my music stuff always stop on this song? Confusing. All right, here we go. Chapter 1, page something. Yay, sewing, couldn't live without it. There were Norsemen about. The smell betrayed them, a putrid odor that engulfed them. They were blurry but lacked grace, and the frequent snapping of twigs underfoot followed the foul stench. Fiona wrinkled her nose in disgust. Of course they would come for a visit just after harvest. There had been no Norse activity for 6 months. They came every so often to take food and leave. Norsemen disgusted her with their brutish mannerisms and animal hides hanging from their backs. But once they took what they wanted, they left the villagers alone. Being a forest town in between the sea and the main cities had its benefits, at least for the Vikings trampling through with no regard for others. Fiona stayed out of the way when they appeared, preferring to find activities inside the thatched hut she shared with her family. She never ran out of socks to darn and ropes to weave. Her father was a trapper, and his expertise was known through the land. He worked hard, determined to provide for his family. A true Irishman. 2 mornings ago, he sent word to the dowry he'd spent 10 years readying, and Fiona's marriage to Jason. That's me. I'm just kidding, it's not me. Hovered close on the horizon. Jason was everything Fiona could have hoped for. Stop it. An Irish gentleman with a hard work ethic, and blue eyes that twinkled. Really? Very nice about me. She blushed to think of the kiss he had stolen earlier in the morning behind King Rock, a massive stone standing twice as tall as their tallest building and capped with jagged edges. The rocky giant divided them from the thickest part of the forest and made for a fantastic lookout point. Fiona crouched near the top and narrowed her eyes to focus on the woods. You hear them too? It was not a question, but a quiet observation. Erin, Fiona's twin sister, had the same curly, wine-colored hair and sharp emerald eyes. She stood on the ground at the base of the King Rock, staring up at her sister with trepidation. Should I go get father? Fiona nodded, still concentrating. Erin disappeared without another word. I'm back? All right. Excellent. If that didn't work, Adamantine, you can always double check to make sure that your stream that you're listening to is set into low latency. I've done that on my cell phone especially, and that removes pretty much any extra lag that normally isn't there. You have to expect a bit of lag, of course. There's going to be some sort of delay, but anything beyond that, it could be the low latency setting. The mist moved, revealing the hulking shapes of the men who descended upon Limerick. Their stench was overpowering, and Fiona fought to keep her breakfast in her stomach. She slid down the length of the rock and landed on the leather-clad feet without a sound. She lifted her thin skirt, just clear of the mud surrounding her, and ran home as the men of the town passed her to greet the newcomers. They moved silently, heads resigned and goods tucked under arms and hauled in makeshift wooden pallets drawn by mules. It was better to get this sort of thing over with quickly. Erin's arms reached out and grasped Fiona's before she got through the doorway to their simple home. The girls clung to each other, listening to the creaks and groans of the pallets. The birds that filled the forest with song now stayed silent in fear of the powerful intruders. I never get used to this, Erin whispered, moving her slender body to the bench farthest from the door. Fiona stared out the doorway. None of us should. Her father stood among the men, tanned hide smoothed onto the back of Darcy, the black horse he'd won in a bet with his brother. One of these days, a Norseman would be taking a liking to the beast and claim her as his own. They stole whatever they wanted. Fiona moved back to join her sister and smiled as reassuringly as she could. This shouldn't take long. Her voice sounded loud in the silence of the air. Green eyes wide, she looked back to the doorway. Nothing moved. The men had passed. On any other exchange, these would be the low, melodic murmur of the Irishman versus the rough, sandy voices of the Norseman. What's going on out there? Erin started for the door, but Fiona grabbed hold of her skirt and pulled in an attempt to haul her back to the bench. I want to see what they're doing, Erin protested. I don't have a good feeling about this, Fiona whispered, but she followed her sister to the doorway and peered out into the clearing. The Norsemen stood frozen with malicious grins on their faces and weapons in their grasp. One figure, significantly larger than the rest, stepped out from the middle. Fiona's eyes rested on the slender form in his arms. Her mother, Aideen. Aideen's eyes were wide with fear. She struggled against the beast of a man's iron grip. Mammy! Fiona shrieked before she could stop herself. Her mother went rigid against her captor. Her eyes were wild, and her nostril flared like an animal caught in a trap. The harsh Icelandic tongue was like sandpaper as the man who held her began to speak. Fiona narrowed her eyes and focused on his head, which was encased in metal with spikes jutting out the top. He wishes to have your land. Another man joined Aideen's captor, his rough accent grating stone in Fiona's ears. He wore similar fur garb to his comrades, and muscle bulged under his tunic, and even though he stood a full head shorter than his companion, he managed to remain just as intimidating. The men of Limerick glanced at each other and at the ground, shuffling their feet. Horses snorted. The tension was almost palpable. I'm afraid I don't understand, Lachlan spoke. Fiona's heart raced as her father stepped forward, his jaw tight and his fists clenched. This is our land, but you are welcome to whatever supplies you need. You always have been. Yeah, welcome, I'm sure. Aideen's captor began shouting, shaking her like a rag doll. Her eyes rolled back into her head, and he slammed her face first into the ground. This is our land now. The German translated a smile smearing across his bulbous face. He raised his axe for one long, horrifying moment before swinging it in an arc downwards. A sickening crack echoed through Limerick, followed by a blanket of shocked silence. Fiona's eyes widened, and she became aware of the pressure in her throat, a scream loud and shrill that came from the depths of her soul. Lachlan dropped to his knees, head bowed in grief as his sobs filled the air. The Viking standing before him roared and then charged. The ground shook as they advanced. Fiona's only thought was her mother, slain so brutally. She reached for her, but hands wrapped around her waist and she was lifted off the ground. She pushed against the arms that held her, fighting to get to her mother's side. Let me go. Mommy! If I let go, you die. Jason hauled her back into the house, his dark hair flopping into his eyes. He pushed her to the ground and crouched in front of her. He held a large dagger in one hand and held her with the other. Outside, the clash of metal against flesh filled the air, and war cries installed fear into the hearts of the people. What did we do? Erin moaned beside her. I don't understand. Large tears rolled down her cheeks, and her hands shook as she wiped them. Stay here. I have to go help. Jason bent down and enveloped Fiona in one last embrace. One final desperate kiss that tasted of salty tears. I love you, he whispered into her ear. Before she could respond, he was out the door, and the din of the fight drowned his footsteps. Fiona and Erin clung tightly to each other, eyes wide and bodies trembling. Erin buried her face in her sister's shoulder and sobbed. Screams outside drove through Fiona's heart like a knife. She had never felt so helpless or hopeless. When she glanced at the doorway and saw the Viking standing there grinning, she knew it was over. She scooted back only to meet the unforgiving clay wall, her arms squeezing her sister protectively as the man thundered inside with a sneer. Rough laughter seared through Fiona's ears. He stood inches away, suffocating her with his hot, fleshy breath, and lifted a meaty hand. The blow barely registered in her mind, but her head snapped sideways and stars cartwheeled into her vision. Fiona fell to the ground, fingers sinking into the dirt floor. She heard her sister scream, a strange, gurgling sound, and reality spiraled away into a world of darkness. Well, that's the opening of the story, and holy crap. there's a break here, so it gives us a moment to digest what we just heard. Sheesh. What an opening. Well done. I could visualize all of that. That tea is wonderful. If you ever need me to make your tea for you, just let me know. I am good at it, okay? We make the best tea, alright? Okay? That's all there is to it. Everybody says they have good tea, but no. I have the best. I'll take one. One lump, please. One lump or two. Quiet blanketed everything. Same tea, please. You got it. Atkinson's Tea Company. That's what we're going to call it. Quiet blanketed everything. Fiona reached up with trembling hands and pushed her hair strand by strand off her face and opened her eyes. Dirt caked on her hands, her nails shredded and bleeding. She glanced to the left. Thin raking lines snaked across the clay wall, marks from her desperate attempt to get away. From what? With a start, she remembered him. The hulk of a Viking with his rough hands and foul breath. She shook her head to clear it, and stared around the house as if noticing everything for the first time. The bench rested sideways by the doorway. The deerskin flap that once served as a door now hung over an upside-down chair. Pots, bowls, metal drinking cups, and blankets were strewn around in a reflection of the chaos that enveloped the town. Erin. Fiona whirled around and searched for her sister with desperate eyes, but she was alone. Sister? The sound of her whisper crackled in the silence. A twig snapped outside. Fiona scrambled back to the far wall, blood pounding in her ears as she waited for another intruder to find her. A hand reached out and grasped the doorway, sliding to the earth and leaving a red, bloody smear in its path. Fiona recognized the small, feminine hand. Erin! Seconds later, the girls squeezed each other in desperation. Black bruises curled around her sister's neck, the perfect outline of fat fingers. Fiona's stomach turned. Are you okay? You're bleeding. Erin looked at her burgundy-soaked frock. I don't know. She leaned against her sister, weak and frail, so Fiona pulled her to the bed. Erin allowed her twin sister to look her over, smoothing her hands across her body until she flinched. There. Fiona lifted her sister's skirt and saw where something thin and sharp had slashed into her thigh. Oh, Erin, she moaned. You poor dear. She snatched up the blanket. Using teeth, fingers, and sheer desperation to rip several strips from it, she bandaged it up her sister's leg as well as she knew how, and then laid her on the torn remains of the comforter. The once exquisite quilt her mother had labored over for a year to do in between daily chores. The quilt was now holding the only comfort the girls had left. Erin drifted into a troubled sleep, and Fiona tiptoed to the entrance, peeking out to see if there were still warriors nearby. It was then that she focused on what their town had undergone in the last few hours. Bodies were scattered in every direction, both human and animal. Flames licked at a few of the homes, and the well bucket rested in several pieces in the grass. Gravelly voices reached her on the breeze, followed by the odor of burning flesh. Bile rose in her throat. She covered her mouth and pulled back, hoping no one noticed her. Footsteps echoed as the Norseman neared the hut. Fiona hurried to her sister's side and threw the doorway skin over her sister's prone body. That would keep her hidden, she hoped, as she flattened herself against the wall by the door's opening. The men were very close now, just a few paces from her. She knew they must be searching for survivors. A chill ran up her spine, the hairs on the back of her neck standing at attention as she waited for them to enter and find her. At the very least, Erin would be safe for a while. She might get a chance to escape. Fiona squeezed her eyes shut, waiting for the moment of her discovery. The men shuffled around the doorway for several long, heart-pounding moments before they moved on. She trembled as she allowed herself to slump into a heap on the ground, her face in her hands and silent sobs racking her small frame. Erin's stirs from underneath the deerskin brought Fiona to her senses. She gathered herself together and launched across the room to kneel by her sister's side. "It's okay, sweetie," she crooned as she lifted the deerskin to check her sister's pale, sweaty face. She didn't look well. Her cheekbones were too pronounced, purple circles forming under her eyes. Her lips moved in soundless words as she slept. Fiona's heart sank. The last time she saw someone sinking into themselves like this was when 9-year-old Cormac was mauled by a boar and caught the tusk to the left bicep. Infection, putrid and green, didn't take long to set in, and within 2 days, the boy was dead. Fiona leaned over his sister and kissed her cheek. It flamed with heat. She smoothed Erin's hair back and rested a palm on her neck, the other hand laced with her sister's. New tears, fresh and scalding, drifted down her face and dripped onto her lap. Erin groaned and shifted her position. Fiona moved one leg to check the wound and found the bandage off kilter from the weight of the red blood. She retrieved several more strips from the comforter and bound the leg once again. As useless as the gesture was, it gave her something to do, something to focus on. When she finished, she sat on the floor and hugged her knees to her chest, rocking without thought to the world. Her sister's breathing was shallower, more labored, and she muttered in her sleep. Cormac had done that too, screaming in terror as nightmares heated his ill mind from the intensity of fever. Erin was progressing faster than the boy had, and Fiona found herself grateful. Her sister would no longer feel pain. She could escape from this harsh reality. "Sister?" The voice was hoarse and halting. Fiona lifted her head and saw Erin's eyes open and focused on her. She seemed lucid. Fiona scooted toward and clasped her sister's outstretched hand. "I'm here," she whispered, kissing the smooth hand with her chapped lips. Erin's smile was faint, her green eyes sad and full of the understanding that she was dying. "I love you," she murmured. "I love you too, sister," Fiona said. Her lower lip trembled. "Take care of Mammy for me." She knew in her heart it wasn't likely her father survived the fight, but didn't want to cause further anguish in her sibling. Erin nodded, coughed, and attempted to turn over on her side. Fiona helped her adjust, her heart lurching in her chest when the rattle began, the signal of death creeping in. Erin's eyes dimmed as her sister kissed her hand again. She coughed again, and blood spattered. She was bleeding inside and out. Regardless of the danger lurking outside, Fiona did the one thing she knew to do. She began to hum a soft, melodic Irish tune. The breathy sound haunted the air as Erin's breathing slowed, and at long last stopped. Fiona sang her sister to the afterlife, in the tradition of their family. Leaving her sister's body felt wrong. Fiona stood at the doorway for a long while, chewing her bottom lip and debating what to do. Attempting to take the body with her would be noticed. If she left her sister where she was, she had a chance of escape. But the Norsemen would undoubtedly defile Erin's body in some way. Fiona bit down at the thought and tasted blood. She turned and peeked outside, expecting to see a big, hulking man glowering at her. Instead, an empty town greeted her. The bodies she had seen hours ago had vanished, leaving muddy impressions in their stead. Footprints scattered everywhere, overlapping each other. The Irish didn't leave footprints with their leather-clad feet. Nothing moved except the Viking flag set up by the town gates, a warning to travelers. The wind whipped it around as if Mother Earth herself protested the murders that had occurred here. It brought the sound of gruff laughter to Fiona's ears, and she tensed. The army was at the town square, which gave her hope of making it east toward the small rusted gate without being detected. She donned her father's leather jacket for protection from the wind and stuffed biscuits into her pockets. Her mother baked those just this morning. More tears threatened. Before she could break down again, she squared her shoulders, took a deep breath, and stepped out into the chilly air. Fiona paused but didn't hear any shouts of discovery and so ducked to her left. She snuck past dark, empty buildings that teemed with life hours ago. A twig snapped behind her, and she whirled around to face her foe. Her heart pounded out of her chest. "Emma?" she exclaimed in a raspy voice, hoping not to be overheard by the wrong person. A gray-clad brunette flung herself into Fiona's embrace, the two girls clinging to each other and crying at the discovery that they were not alone. "We can't stay out here, they'll see us," Fiona said, grabbing her cousin's hand and pulling her across the mud and grass as drops of rain began pelting them without mercy. Calling the game getting too dark, Grand's team won. Woo! Nice, Stunt Mama's mama. Did you hear that, Stunt Mama? Your team won. Mother Earth cries for the dead, Emma cried quietly as they moved. Shh, Fiona admonished. They sloshed through the puddles and mud with dark curls pasted to their faces and backs, and their clothes clinging to their bodies like second skins. When they reached the gate, Fiona fumbled with the latch, pain shooting through her fingertips from the raw cuts she didn't remember getting. Frustration rose in her chest when she realized she couldn't open it. She tried again, involuntary groans escaping as she tried to push past the pain. Emma stopped her with a cold, wet hand. "I'll try," she said. Fiona stepped to the side, and Emma wasted no time working the rusted latch free of its clasp. She took Fiona by the wrist and led her through the gate. Just through the opening, Fiona stumbled into the woods looming before them. She dared not stop until she staggered to a tree concealed from view of the gate. The rain was not as punishing here, and she sank to her knees by the rough wood of the tree and collapsed in exhaustion, unable to even cry. Numbness crept into her soul, taking away the pain for a moment, but leaving her an empty shell, waiting to dry before cracking into pieces under the sun. Emma crawled over and laid with her. The occasional drop of water on their skin and the sound of the leaves rustling in the breeze lulled them both into a fitful slumber, filled with the cries of their dead loved ones. And that is chapter 1. Wow. What a start.
Drink! 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 Drink!
I will. I will. Cheers. Wow, my goodness. Reminded me to get water. See? Good idea. And that goes for all of you. If you don't have a drink with you, go get one. I have to go feed my little ones? By all means, definitely feed them. They would appreciate that. That was an intense first chapter. I mean, talk about gut-wrenching moments of fear and anxiety. Ugh. I mean, we knew it was coming. We just didn't know when. I wasn't sure if it was going to be in the first chapter or the second chapter. I had wondered if the first chapter was going to be like a warm-up to the whole thing, and then in the second chapter, all hell broke loose. Putting on my phone while I make their bowl. Oh, there you go. But yeah, this book just started out strong. Just went right in. And I thought it was great. I don't know whether to cry or throw a potato at a wall. Don't ask me how or why. I mean, maybe use something that won't hurt the wall. Like popcorn. Baked potato? That could work. A little softer. Although it might be a little hot. We play hot potato with the wall. Your turn. It was I mean, I kind of feel the same way, Adamantine. This first chapter was both so sad and yet really good. I mean, that's not the right word, I don't think. I mean, good is not the right word for sure. But it was raw, and it was just well written, you know? Yeah, it was impressive. Oh, a friend of mine at school today threw a mushy banana at a wall outside. It splattered, and he chuckled in full force. It was funny. Okay. I imagine a mushy banana would definitely have a nice splatter effect, for sure. I'm wondering if the character playing me, Jason, if he made it or not. I'm assuming no. Your pause and okay made me laugh way too hard. You know, I'm here to entertain, you know? Whether it's through my commentary or through the book we're reading, I am here to entertain. But yeah, I'm curious if the boyfriend made it out alive. Something makes me think no. And I'm here to randomly share things. I don't know why. Brain turned off as soon as I got home. Share all you want. Share away. So question, now that we've read a chapter, how's the volume of the microphone? It's a brand new mic, new mix, new everything. How does it sound? Am I too high? Or too loud? Am I too soft? What are we thinking? Is the music too much? Sounds good to me. Okay, great. Definitely too. Are you being serious right now? I can't actually tell. Yeah. Just remember, I can contact you in other ways. The ads are hella loud in comparison. Yeah, I imagine they are. Because ads suck. All right. I'm going to post the link again for anyone to check it out. Take one more sip of my tea because it's delicious and it helps my throat. Oh, also, can't believe I forgot. Exclamation point 4th, like the number. If you want to hear the book Fourth Wing, after I read this at about 9 o'clock Central Time, an hour and 10 minutes from now, I'll be in the event chat of Stunt Mama's Discord reading Fourth Wing. How could I forget that? Sheesh. Okay. I don't know what page we're on because it doesn't say. So we're just going to keep going with chapter 2. I heard 4th and typed it. I mean, that makes sense. I could have just done 4, but the book is Fourth Wing, not 4 Wing. So I went with that. Anyway, feel free to join Stunt Mama's Discord if you wish. At about 9 o'clock Central, an hour and 9 minutes from now, give or take, I will be in there getting ready to read more of Fourth Wing. Okay. Chapter 2. Fiona's eyes refused to open. Weights as heavy as iron held them prisoner. Her ears, however, picked up the soft crunch of footsteps and the lull of voices. Shifting her position, she found Emma's weight gone. Warmth spread in her chest, a panic rising into her lungs and taking away her air. Where was Emma? What had it done with her? She sat up and drew a long breath of muggy air, coughing and gasping. Her eyes flew open, and she rubbed at them, trying to focus on the blurry world moving around her. When her eyes finally cooperated and brought things into sharp clarity, Fiona gaped in surprise. Instead of Vikings, she saw peasants dressed in drab, muted forest colors. They walked around what appeared to be a rugged campsite with tents in the ground and poles sticking up in the air. At her movement, people turned to look at her, but then returned to work as if it were an everyday occurrence. Fiona hugged her knees to her chest and scanned around for a sign of someone familiar. Where was Emma? Was she here? The tree branches above her rustled, and a boy dropped down in front of her and smiled. "You're awake," he exclaimed, He could not have been more than 9 or 10 years old, with sandy hair and dark eyes. He wore an off-white tunic with sleeves to the elbow, deerskin pants, and stood barefoot. Oof, barefoot in a forest. I was starting to think you'd never wake up. Looks like Julian was right. He frowned at the thought. He's usually right anyway. Where am I? Fiona's voice cracked, and it was then that she realized how parched she was, how dry her lips had become. In the Wickered Forest. He eyed her. Where else would you be? What? Fiona's muscles tightened. Wickered Forest, the boy said patiently. Are you okay? No, she stammered, trembling. She scrambled to her feet, her hands fluttering behind her for the security of the tree and its rough, familiar bark. I don't know Wickered anything, she whispered to the boy, fearful of the men and women nearby. The boy said nothing as he studied her impassively, his thin arms crossed over his chest, one eyebrow raised. He waited for her to calm herself. Get a grip, she thought, closing her eyes against her swimming vision. She slid down to sit at the base of the tree and rested her head back against its reliable comfort. Wee ones are fed and not so wee ones too? Well, everyone's wee happy. We love that, don't we? Yes, we do. I'm going to stop now. Surely she was dreaming and would wake up any moment to find Emma sleeping next to her, the rain pouring over them, and the town still ravaged. When she opened her eyes again, the boy stood very still, dark eyes watching her with mild concern. Fine, she sighed. So I'm somewhere named Wickered Forest. Who are you? The boy broke into a crooked grin. Dax. He plopped down next to her with boyish enthusiasm, even. I think I ought to know your name as well. You know, before I get all personal with you. His rough accent was hard to place. Oh, sorry, I'm Fiona. He nodded, processing this. Where are you from? Well, I'm starting to wonder that myself. She smiled wanly. But really, I'm from Ireland. Aren't you? Ireland. The boy tasted the word on his tongue like new food, then shook his head. Never heard of it, miss. Fiona shook her head violently. We're in Ireland, she said. Nope, I'm afraid we aren't. His eyes narrowed as he studied her like a crazy person. Maybe she was. And apparently there's an ad starting in about 20 seconds. Maybe. So we're going to pause since I just turned a page, because I never know if it's actually going to be an ad or not. In 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Apparently you have an ad right now. No ad. Not yet. I do not. Well, we'll never know since Super isn't here. This is true. One of the reasons we can all breathe easily tonight about the ads is because Super isn't here. Isn't he on a trip right now, too? Like, with some other guys, I think. That was this week, right? Or was that last week? My brain. Only Super gets ads? No, Super is subbed, and every time I ask if an ad is playing, he goes, nope, no ad here. So, there you go. See, yeah, it says there's an ad going, and it's going to be, you just got ads? Okay, so it's super delayed. It's lying to me. Thank you, we waiting. Books, we waiting. That's right, we are waiting. It's a good opportunity to sip some tea, you know? What do you think to the story so far, by the way? I like it. It's very well written. It has a nice flow to it. Feels natural. What is that? I see a person. Is that a person? I like it so far. Wonderful. I mean, if you didn't, there's not much I can do about it other than to tell you change your mind. I can't change the book. Face palming to Super being a smart. Oh, okay. I thought it was a face palm, but I couldn't quite tell. You're back from the ads. Well, it still says I have 10 seconds left of ads. But welcome back. Twitch is so messed up. I swear. It's ridiculous. All right. Where was I? Oh yeah, we're at the top of the page. That's right. I stopped because we turned a page. Still nothing from me? Well, you win. Tacky is the winner. All right. What was happening? Oh, that's right. She's saying we're in Ireland, and he's like, no, you're not. Never heard of it. Where are we? Her frustrated outburst froze the encampment. Everyone around them paused, eyes turned towards her. The boy leaped back to the safety of the woman standing near a cart laden with beans and corn. Silence blanketed them all as they watched and waited, wondering what this devil girl would do next. She clenched her hands into fists, daring them each with a glare to say something to her. Go back to the tent, Dax, a deep voice ordered, breaking the spell. It sounded familiar, though the accent had the same odd inflection as the boy's. The child obediently turned and slipped into the gathering of people, all remaining watchful of Fiona. Footsteps caught her attention just to the left, and she turned her head. Hope welled up in her heart at the close-cropped dark hair, those piercing blue eyes, that stocky build. She would know him anywhere. Jason? She whispered, hardly daring to believe even as she spoke. At the mention of the name, he paused, exchanging glances with those around him. Frustration welled in Fiona's chest, tears blurring her vision. What is your problem? She screamed, slamming a slender fist into the ground. Everyone shuffled back, putting an extra space between her and them. Jason, however, stepped forward and knelt in front of her as if approaching an injured deer. He reached out and wrapped his arm around her fingers. Does your head hurt? He asked. Fiona nodded, salty tears spilling over her cheeks and dripping onto her smock. He remembered. She raised her free hand to his face, running dirt-smudged fingers across his cheek to his jaw, hardly believing he was here. He had survived. Do you know your name, love? Reality shattered. What? Fiona was incredulous. You know my name. I'm afraid I don't. His voice was soft, gentle, as if he found her to be some fragile thing that would crumble with the slightest word, or the lightest weight. Jeez, I can read. Jason, it's me, Fiona. A sob choked in her throat. Fiona. He said her name slowly, as if it was foreign to him. My name isn't Jason. I'm so sorry, Amlas. That's not him. It's not I. Okay. There's a break in the story. Ivar was not an ordinary man. His mother loved to tell him how he came into the world too soon, and she nearly left him to die. As she set him on a rock outside of town, he cried, and she said the strength of his lung pierced her heart. She gathered him back against her bosom and returned home. His father thought it was a dreadful omen and abandoned them both. He often walked right past them on the street without a glance. People took pity on his mother and tossed her coins and gave her washing to do as a meager income. The day Ivar turned 15, he confronted his jackal of a father and demanded repentance for leaving. The man laughed at the boy until Ivar reached up and slit his throat. The gurgling sound he made was music to Ivar's ears. No one messed with Ivar or his mother after that. They couldn't have even if they dared. Ivar set fire to the village on his 18th birthday after locking everyone in the small church building during their morning service. Good Lord. I mean, I understand you're upset. Sheesh. All right then. Ivar then took his mother to a town where the bloody Mordor's settlement was just beginning. There she set up a bakery and made a decent wage for herself. Ivar, being one of great physical stature, put his rage to good use in the Mordor army, learning to pillage and burn with the best of them. His mother was proud of his new, eventual status in leading his own war band of men. Yes. Power. 10 years later, Ivar had built a significant reputation for himself as the most feared berserker in the known kingdoms. 300 men at his command. A dozen commanders were willing to drop everything and come if he sent for them. He channeled his temper into one thing the Mordors desired: conquering. Now, Ivar's patience thinned. The town they currently occupied was all but empty. The men and women were dead save for the few who cowered enough to make good slaves. He was still not pleased. I'm here, my lord. Aldo bowed as he spoke. Ivar would never express the sentiment, but the man was his closest comrade. There was an unspoken affection between them, a bond that rendered them nearly inseparable. He nodded to the shorter man and returned his gaze to the weathered map stretched across the crusty wooden table of the town's meeting hall. We waited too long, Ivar said. The village was not a supply that I hoped. It's enough. Aldo stepped to his friend's side. The men are satisfied. Satisfaction is laziness. Ivar slammed his fist upon the table. The lamp resting on the corner tipped toward the floor, but a nearby soldier stepped forward and caught it in his hand. The young man cast a furtive glance at his commander before sliding the lamp back on the table and then pressing his spine against the wall as if to appear one with it. Being noticed rarely paid off. This is so true in the military. Aldo shrugged, unruffled. We've refilled our bags and the supply wagon. We shouldn't stay long. I don't like the feel of it. Of course. Ivar studied the map for a long, quiet moment. We're not far. Maybe 4 days. What shall I tell the men? We leave at first light. Ivar stood to his full, imposing height and crossed massive arms over an equally impressive chest. His armor shone silver in the lamplight. Load the survivors into the wagon and lock it down. I want 1 guard at each corner of it. The men began moving to the door to make his commands happen. There was always a sense of urgency when Ivar gave a command. Aldo led the way, leading Ivar to sit quietly and to stare into the flickering flame of the lamp. With no one to watch, he reached into a small satchel hanging from his belt and withdrew a vial containing a substance similar to sand, brown and gritty, shifting with the movement. He pulled the lid off the glass container with his teeth and poured a small amount into his open palm. He fumbled as he replaced the cover and set the vial on the wooden table. Ivar turned to the candle. The flame danced despite the absence of wind, tipping greedily towards his hand. He hovered his hand over the lamp and sprinkled the sand in a circle, feeding the flame with the granules. The fire spun and turned with violent chaos, burning white hot. The candle began to collapse in on itself, molten wax flowing over the metal holder and onto the table. 2 small, blood-red dots drifted into view from the middle of the flame, turning in circles at the first, and then settling in one spot. Ivar was no meek man, but the sight simultaneously frightened and pleased him. He saw the eyes of the soul trapped in the vial, the sorceress Alina. She was disembodied now, but her presence filled the room in a suffocating blanket that nearly choked him. He cleared his throat to maintain his pride and his airway. The sound startled her, and the red eyes began rotating in wild circles. We are close, Ivan murmured. Her eyes settled in front of his face. She studied him, searching his mind with invisible fingers to confirm his words are truth. The sensation was oddly thrilling, his lips curling in enjoyment. He thought of the town, its takeover, and how close the army was to its ultimate destination. It was the only way to feed her with knowledge. When she was satisfied, the flame drew back to the lamp and rested there. Ivar shifted restlessly in his chair. The flame jumped at the movement. We are alone, he said in a low tone. No one knows yet. The flame began to morph, and a thin, translucent face pushed out of the yellow fire. She was nearly as lovely as how she had been as a human being. A person with flesh and blood. Her cheekbones were high and prominent, her lips full and her hair long. It struck Ivar as strange to see a person as only a face in flames, but he shrugged the thought away before she could sense it. She was sometimes temperamental. He figured that was why they meshed so well. Your men wonder about your motives, she said in a hollow voice. They question you. They will do as I command, he assured her. It was best to stay in her good graces. Her vicious side had slain many battle-hardened men, and he did not intend to be one of them. Alina was leading Ivar to Old Grange, a 1,000-year-old mausoleum made of stone. The dome-shaped tomb stretched a mile in each direction, encompassing its inhabitants securely against the elements. The only opening was a doorway cut meticulously into one side. If he made it there in time, Ivar was promised access to the secret of the tomb and a source of great power. For now, he watched the sorcerer's face merge with the flame reluctantly until only red dots remained outside the vial. Then, those vanished as well. She never stayed long. It took too much effort. Ivar had found a vessel for her, a young woman captured for the sole purpose of giving flesh to Alina once again. Old Grange would help her. Help him. Them. Together, Ivar and Alina were destined to rule the known kingdom. And that was chapter 2. So, when Fiona and her cousin fell asleep, Fiona woke up. Thank you. Without her cousin, and seemingly in a strange land somewhere, because she's definitely not in Ireland. And then we find out about this Ivar guy and Alina, who Alina we knew about because she's mentioned on the back of the book. But what they're going to do is anybody's business. Force a hydrate? I'm working on it. Hot tea. Don't rush me. And I would have been in a suit tonight, but thankfully, I was able to get home a little bit sooner than I anticipated. So, otherwise I'd be sitting here in a white shirt, very nice tie, and vest. Like a deep, rich blue vest. It's a very nice suit. Drink more? Okay. I have to save some for when we read Fourth Wing, you know. So bossy. You drink more. Shoosh. You're gonna make him have to go pee? Yeah. What Tacky said. Do you prefer Tacky or Corgi? Because I feel like everyone calls you Corgi, and I've just started calling you Tacky. So I feel like that's really rude. I call her Corgi. Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. I was like, I'm calling you Tacky. Stump Mama calls you Corgi. But has anyone asked you, what do you want to be called? Ooh, what if I called you Tack? Everyone calls me Corgi, but the French communities I'm in call me Tacky, so either works. Well, I was born and raised in the UK, so maybe that's why I called you Tacky. She'll be Corgi. I can't change it at this point. Can I call you Tack? I feel like I have to be different. Hannah calls me Corgs. Go for it. Yes. All right. Stump Mama, you can keep calling her Corgi. I'm going to call her Tack. So there. All right. Let me get a grip of how long chapter 3 is, which we will have time for, but yeah, I can't even tell you how many pages it is because there's no page numbers. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 and a half. 6.5 pages. All right. Chapter 3. Fiona stared at the man crouched before her. "You're Jason," she scoffed. "I've known you for years." "There must be some mistake," he replied, his eyes narrowing. He seemed clueless, but she knew him. Didn't she? Her confusion grew. He had the same solid build as Jason, curly brown hair with blue eyes that seemed to glow in intensity. His nose was even identical, the point tipping down toward his top lip. Fiona couldn't find anything that wasn't exactly the same as her Jason. Yet, here he sat in denial. "Super!" "Hi, Super. Amlas, can you please give a shout out to Supernatural Writer? Pretty, please." "I've been meaning to ask you, Super, how's your book coming along?" "I assume it's still in the works, in some way, shape, or form." "Thank you, Amlas. I appreciate you." "If you're not Jason, then who are you?" She crossed her arms over her chest. He looked her up and down, and a twinkle flickered in his blue eyes as he smirked. "If you must know, my name is Julian." He gave her a full sun-bright smile. When she remained silent and stared at him incredulously, he took back her hand and stood, pulling her with him. "You are in Wickard Forest. Yes, I know." Julian snorted. They walked silently through the encampment, Fiona clinging to her sanity through the grip of her new acquaintance, although it was difficult to think of him this way. Every fiber of her being wanted to smother him with kisses. Probably going to be inappropriate for him if she did that. He looked just like Jason, as if her fiancé had an identical twin. "So, you've never heard of Ireland?" "I think I'll say goodnight here." "Oh, no worries. Mama House Gaming, have a great night." Also, kisses gross. Really? You should hear some of the things we've read on this channel. Okay? He looked just like Jason, as if her fiancé had an identical twin. "So, you've never heard of Ireland?" "I'm afraid not." "Then what do you call your country?" "Orthea is our homeland," he said. "Never heard of it." Julian laughed. "That seems to be a common problem today." "I don't understand." Fiona gazed around her in wonder, taking in the trees, grass, and people milling quietly about. "This all looks just like I remember, but it feels different. When I was here before I woke, it was raining, and I had..." Fiona trailed off as the memories of the Vikings, roars, the spray of blood, and the screams of terror filled her mind. She saw her sister Erin moaning on the cot, drenched in fever. Jason was telling her to stay put, his eyes wild and his mouth foaming as if he were rabid. When he turned, she looked down to see her mother's head with the mouth twisted open in a silent scream. "Fiona? Fiona, can you hear me?" She became vaguely aware that she was shaking like a beaten dog, her muscles protesting the memories that haunted her, the tragedy that followed her. When quiet blanketed the air, she realized she'd been screaming. Now she heard only her panting and felt arms around her. Julian held her tightly until her breaths became more natural and the fuzziness in her head cleared away. Tack, we have read some very spicy stuff on this stream. Just saying, like every chapter, it was, whew, wow. And Stump Mama's back. Back on my laptop. Wonderful. We just got into chapter 3.
More!
I'm working on it. So yeah, you'll definitely want to go back and listen to the VOD once it's posted, because it's been a really interesting first and second chapter. The first chapter is like in your face right away kind of stuff. So anyway, continuing on. Fiona sank against him like a child, sobs wrenching out from her very soul. She didn't see the other folk peeking around at her, nor Dax running to her side and grasping her hand. His worried eyes meeting Julian's apprehensive ones. I have shades of grey, I like the spices.
Spicy.
I will listen to chapter 2 in the car. Okay, cool. But kissing is gross? Oh my god. You need more rest, love, Julian murmured at long last. Fiona felt coldness swoop in as he stood and took his body heat with him. It permeated to her soul, and she shivered violently and clutched at her frock collar. An arm slid around her back and another under her knees, and she was hoisted into the air. She opened her eyes to find herself nearly nose to nose with Julian. Impulse overcame her, and she grabbed his face and joined her lips with his, greedily kissing him and soaking in his heat. He pulled back and stared at her in disbelief. Sorry, she breathed, and he began to trudge across the campgrounds with her securely positioned in his arms. Warmth spread up her neck, and she buried her face in his shirt so that she wouldn't have to look at him again. For several minutes she felt the jarring pace he kept, before he stopped, never faltering his hold on her, and placed her on a cot inside one of the brown skin tents. She stared at him then, her teary eyes hopeful that he would snap out of this and recognize her. His face remained neutral as he covered her with a downy quilt. I'll be back. Get some sleep. He seemed to want to be anywhere but there. Fiona shriveled up under the blanket, wishing she could hide under its comforting warmth forever. His footsteps were soft, but to her they sounded like a hammer smashing against iron. The sound stopped a few feet away, and she peeked over the top of the blanket to see the flap of the door swing down and the silhouette of Julian and a shorter, leaner man facing each other. This can't be a good sign. Whoa. Jeez, that scared me. Ah, stop Mama's mama. Thanks for gifting your daughter a sub. That was very kind of you. Oh, and that means... Hey, it worked. Squats, 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 squats. Thank you for doing that. That was super kind of you. No more ads for you, lassie. This can't be a good sign, the smaller man said. His voice was raspy. What's her condition? She seems physically okay, Julian responded. This mod might pass out, see you later. Ah, then my work here has done wonders. Good night, Amlas. Her mind is another story. I think she's gone mad. She keeps thinking I'm someone else. Maybe you are in another world. The man chuckled. She's a looker. Maybe you should go along with it. Fiona's heart pounded. No, I am not to be made a fool. She pulled the blanket back over her head, wishing to wake up with her arms around Emma and the cold rain splashing on their faces. That seemed preferable to the circumstances she now found herself in. You know me better than that. While Julian sounded shocked, he also seemed mildly amused at the thought. There is something different about her, though. I'm not sure what. Well, I'll be off to fetch the doctor for you, the smaller man said. Thanks, Brennan. There was silence except for the shouts of children playing in the distance and the murmur of running water nearby. Splashing made Fiona think of children wading in a creek, throwing handfuls of water in the air and ducking as the droplets came back down upon them. The sound lulled her to sleep. Oh, that reminds me. I drove over a creek today on a bridge, and the sign for the river underneath said, Kickapoo Creek. I almost swerved off the road laughing so hard. Kickapoo. So there you go. Yep. Kickapoo Indians. I'm just like, but really though? Kickapoo? I mean, I guess it's better than eat-a-poo. Taste-a-poo. Lick-a-poo. Squat-a-poo. I'm gonna stop. There's a small break in the story as time has passed by. Fiona awoke to cold hands pressing on her bare abdomen. Pain seared through her. She screamed, launched herself from the bed, and scrambled to the opposite side of the tent. The sides gave way to her retreat, and she crouched there with bloodshot eyes, trying to sort out where she was. The tent became a flurry of movement as several figures whirled to follow her, all of them calling out simultaneously to stop, to calm down. It was the last thing on Fiona's mind, and she looked around her with wide eyes. Her arms and legs trembled with fatigue, and she fell to her knees. She only recognized one person in the room, Julian. He stood near the tent entrance, hands shoved in his pockets. When she saw him, she froze. Even though he was not Jason, the familiarity was still there and brought an edge of comfort to her. Anxious, she reached out. All heads turned to gaze at him, silent and waiting for his response. At first, there was none. He stood in one spot with his jaw clenched and neck muscles taut. After a long, painstaking moment, he stepped forward and crossed the space between them, taking her hands. I can't stand very well, she whispered. He nodded, his understanding, and lifted her quickly to the bed. Once positioned back in place, Fiona crossed her arms and tried to appear smaller, her eyes darting around the strangers who accompanied Julian. She hated the way they looked at her. The pity burned into her skin. Julian cleared his throat, breaking the silence. This is our doctor, Stelios, and his nursemaids, Leah and Natalie, he replied, gesturing to the 3 new people who hovered nearby. The doctor was an older man with wrinkles covering every inch of his face, neck, and hands. He had a shock of white hair that hung to his ears and wore an expression of consternation. I haven't seen that word in a long time. Fiona thought of her outburst and blushed. The elderly were honored in her town, and he was much older looking than anyone she had ever known. The nursemaids were young but held equally stern expressions. They stood to the side with arms folded in front of them and cloths tucked under their arms, their hair wound into tight buns. And, Julian added, the fat guy over there is Demas. He owns this tent. Fat? Demas snorted. I am well-rounded, thank you. Someday you will look like me. He hesitated. Only taller. Fiona's ears burned brighter. I didn't mean to cause trouble, she stammered. Trouble? The doctor laughed, displaying a brown, toothed mouth. No more than any of these young whippersnappers around here. But I'd like to finish my exam and get on to supper. Obediently, Fiona laid back and stilled for the doctor. His cold hand startled her, and she jumped. Easy, he muttered, gently palpitating her abdomen around to her sides. Can you tell me what happened before you woke up here? Fiona closed her eyes, wishing she didn't have to answer. I was lying on the ground in the rain, holding my friend, Emma. Why would you be lying in the rain? He sounded incredulous. I was exhausted, she said, and had nowhere to go. It seemed as good a place as any to wait for death. Fiona caught a movement out of the corner of her eye. Julian moved back to the edge of the tent, arms crossed and face neutral. She wished he would come to hold her like Jason used to. She would feel much better, she was sure. What happened? The doctor was not done questioning her yet. Fiona wished he would leave her alone. She knotted her hands together over her stomach, unsure of how much information she would be giving a stranger. He seemed genuine, but she knew that meant nothing. Again, what happened? His voice wavered with impatience. Fiona didn't trust him, even when he assured her she was safe. She pressed her lips together and said nothing. It took several minutes for the doctor to understand she was not speaking of it. He shook his head and closed his eyes before continuing his interrogation. Do you know where you are? She detested this question and its inevitability, but it was much easier to answer than the previous one. Went to put a kiddo to bed? Excellent. But it was much easier to answer than the previous one. Limerick, Ireland. The nursemaids glanced at each other, then at the doctor. Julian kept his eyes fixed on his shoes. The doctor continued poking and prodding until he pressed a spot just on the backside of her hip. Pain flared up her back and she cried out before she could stop herself. Julian started forward, but Demas put a hand on the young man's chest and shook his head. What was that? Julian asked. Stelios gently turned Fiona on her side. No small feat for her as flames continued licking up and down her spine. He did a few more taps on the middle and top of her back, and she bit back more cries of pain. Surely he was stabbing her, but she didn't see any flashes of metal nor hear the gush of blood and ripping skin. He stepped back and rubbed a palm across his wrinkled face. What's that mean? Julian sounded concerned now, and Fiona felt a flash of pleasure despite her pain. Maybe he did care. There's pretty deep bruising, Stelios said, stroking his furry chin. She needs to rest for today, and we'll know more in the morning. Well, she'll have to go to your place, Julian. Demas grinned. The wife will be home soon. She might not take kindly to finding another woman in her bed. My place? Julian looked uncertain. I'll find somewhere, Fiona objected, sitting up. She flinched as her body protested, but she pushed off the bed regardless. Her legs betrayed her. She fell to her knees and caught herself with her palms. More pain shot through her arms. Arms lifted into the air, and Fiona found herself held against Julian's chest yet again. He stepped out of the tent into the cooling air. Despite protesting in her mind, she gave in and laid her head on his shoulder, feeling the sway of his walk. She closed her eyes and tried to pretend she was at home with Jason, Emma, Aaron, and her parents. They would all sit around the campfire and tell stories and eat rabbits until they passed out from exhaustion or stumbled to their homes in a sleepy haze. Jason told funny stories, centering on the follies of others. Aaron preferred enchanting tales of lords and ladies and the staff who served them. The crackling of the fire was so real in her mind that she opened her eyes with a start, looking around desperately for the scene she'd conjured in her mind. And that takes us to the end of chapter 3. So all we know at this point is that she's in a place called Orthea. But we don't really know where Orthea is. Although I have a suspicion it might be a Scottish thing, perhaps. But who knows? But why does this guy, Julian, look so much like the person she knows as Jason? That is very peculiar. Very peculiar indeed. And what is to become of Ivar and this mysterious Alina leading them to this tomb of power? So many questions. No answers yet, but we do have a finished puzzle. Look at that. It says Viking longships in Norway. Huh, maybe they're in Norway. Who knows? Will we ever find out? I don't know. Good job, everybody. And just in time, too. Again. Tack, if you're here on Sunday, there will be another puzzle for you to do. Sometimes it ranges from 400 to 600, 700, 800 pieces. This one was, I think, just shy of 500. 492, 482, something like that. So yeah. Good stuff. Well done. If Super were here, he would argue that it would go faster. Or that Stunt was slowing him down. So, all peaceful on the Western Front tonight, if you know what I'm saying. And Super will be back to fight us on it? Yes, he probably will. Well, gosh, this has been a very cool 3 chapters so far. I am so glad that I got the chance to read this book. I'm assuming she's still streaming. Maybe. Oh, she's not. She actually raided out. Darn it. Now we can't raid her. Never mind. That's okay. We have other people we can raid. But it would have been cool to go raid that violin chick since we're reading her book. I did tell her we were starting. Nope, she raided out. Hi, Gemma. I think I think I remember her saying something about needing to do an 18-hour stream tomorrow or something crazy like that. Maybe I misheard, but that's why she was on early and maybe why she left early, perhaps. But anyway, it don't matter. We still get to read her book, and I am super happy with what we've read so far. Love the story. It's got action, it's got drama, it's got emotion. It reads well, like it's been edited very thoroughly, which I really appreciate as a reader. That, you know, I don't read ahead with these books, so it's I just read it as I see it, just like you would if you picked it up for yourself. That's what makes this experience so unique, because I have no idea what we're going to read or who the characters are going to be. I can't give anything away, you know, nothing like that. So I go in blind, so to speak. Yeah. So, just as a quick reminder, !4th if you're going to join us in Stump Mama's Discord in about 15 minutes. We're going to continue reading Fourth Wing in there. How are you liking the new mic? I love the new mic. And I love the mixer that comes with it, or that I picked up to help me with it. The mixer has a bunch of sounds on it as well, which I still have yet to learn, because there's like 16 of them. So yeah, all kinds of different buttons for me to play. I could do a redeem, actually. Instead of knowing what the sounds are, I could just redeem like 1 through 16, and then I just push a button. I might do that. Kind of like your doll page, just with sounds. Play number 12. Done. Because I can't actually hear it in my head. I don't have it looped back to me. Because to do that, I'd have to be directly plugged in into the mixer to get a loop back. I have heard them. I've played them for myself, but like here and now when I've just hit that one, no idea what it sounded like. So it's for your ears only, which is totally fine. Anywho, okay, I knew it was whistling. Like, it tells me what it is. I just don't know what it sounds like. So we finished chapter 2, right? We finished 3 chapters tonight. We'll be starting chapter 4 on Sunday. And we're going to raid somebody. So here's a raid message. Please, please, please give that a copy paste. Copy pasta. We are going to go raid our good friend Rexter. Cool dude. Absolutely wonderful guy. Helps if I can type. All right, there we go. Thank you for being here. I really appreciate you. Thank you for bearing with me as we got the new mic going, with the new mixer, starting a new book. Stump Mama's Mama, thank you so much for gifting your daughter a sub. I greatly appreciate that. I'm saving those squats for next time. And yeah, Discord very soon for the next book. Otherwise, we'll be back on Sunday to continue the Shades of Orthea. So until then, please, 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 take care of yourselves, take care of each other, and have a fantastic night.